All right, so next up we have Sun Zero. Sun Zero, how you doing, brother?
Yo, what's up, Akalon?
Very
nice
good
to
to
meet
you,
you, man. First, before I ask you my question, I gotta say, man, I love your content. I love your community, man.
Thank
make
you.
Some awesome stuff, man.
I really appreciate that.
Yeah, man, you're honestly one of the few genuine YouTubers, especially in the WoW community, because I feel like you WoW content creators, when they reach a certain amount of viewerships, things start to become a bit disingenuous because they kind of want to maintain their relationship with Blizzard and not kind of endanger it.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I think that's because I've not reached that like special number of viewership. You know, but also because I'm just in general, I'm someone that just says whatever the fuck I want, and if that happens to rub people the wrong way, then hey, you know, so be it. I'm already worried enough about how my viewers see my content. I can't be worried about how developers see my content. So I really appreciate the kind words. Sun-Zero, what is your question?
So my question is about Zoval, the unenjoyable character. I actually kind of think Zoval, there's a possibility where he might come back down the line. Because the way, and my reasoning for that is, through the storyline of 9.2, we're shown that I think they're called Automa, the machines. Their souls, that mortal soul can empower it, right? And Zoval's corpse is kind of just left on top of the Sekapur. I don't know how to pronounce that correctly. But his corpse is just left there. I'm actually thinking that it could be possible that with Arthas' soul, when it kind of just disappears, that they could possibly bring him back and be like, hey, Arthas' soul can empower Zoval's body. And that way they can bring back both of them, right? Or just Arthas himself. And it would be kind of a fitting way to instate a new jailer, because there really isn't anyone that's kind of manning that post, per se, of the jailer position. It's kind of a vacant spot right now. And it seems that in the mall, there has to be someone there that's kind of handling that, because through other objects in game, it's kind of referred that the mall, there's other souls that kind of buy for like what's the word, supremacy there, to kind of take it over and dictate how things run. And that the jailer, even though he did, you know, for his own end, he didn't want someone like establishing some set of command over there. So I'm wondering if Blizzard is trying to set that up. If not, you know, Blizzard's writing is pretty cursed, but I'm curious to see if maybe that's a possibility down the line.
All right, so with Steve Denuser at the helm, anything is a fucking possibility at this point. Like, there is a possibility that vanilla TBC and Wrath was all a dream, and he manages to fucking retcon the shit out of that. So I wouldn't put it past Steve Denuser to do something like this. I would say, though, when it comes to Zoval, I think you'd have to search far and wide for a more disliked antagonist than Zoval. The character clearly just missed every single mark that there was. No one in the end cared about this character. You know, if I think back to every single antagonist that we've ever had in World of Warcraft, all throughout the expansion, the biggest questions were raised around that antagonist. People were talking about that antagonist. People wanted to know more about that antagonist. And then you look at Shadowlands, and suddenly the story shifts. People really talked a lot about Denathrius. People spoke a lot about Sylvanas. People spoke a lot about Tyrande. But very few people gave a fuck about Zoval. The only questions people had were genuine questions of who the fuck is this guy? And why should we care about him in any way, shape, or form? So I think it would be risky for Blizzard. Look, I don't like the way that Blizzard ended Zoval's story, but I do think it's best for them to cut their losses and move on, because I don't think the player base is ever going to forget the train smash that was Zoval. Now, if we want to talk, I'm literally in the process of writing a script about this. Sort of the thing that killed Zoval, and really the thing that killed Shadowlands, was logical inconsistencies. That's what killed it. You see, for stories to be believable and to sort of pull the audience in, the story has to be believable, right? And not believable in terms of it should be able to happen in real life, because there's plenty of stories that is told that obviously can never happen in real life. But the story as it is being told has to be believable. This is where you rely quite heavily on logical consistency. So point A moves to point B, moves to point C, D, E, and F, and ultimately ends at X, Y, or Z without skipping any of the other letters in the process. Because if you start skipping letters, your story now struggles with things like logical inconsistencies. A good example of this is nothing escapes the maw, except, of course, everything fucking escapes the maw. That's a logical inconsistency, because either nothing can escape the maw, or everything can escape the maw, or only certain things can't escape the maw. But you can't have it both ways, and Shadowlands really is just full to the brim with these logical inconsistencies, where things are said at the beginning and then do not play out the way that they were sort of presented to us at the start. Now, once you have that, you lose the audience very quickly, because you're now sort of toying with the audience, right? Because the audience is meant to believe one thing, but then at the same time, maybe the audience isn't meant to believe anything, because you yourself don't really seem to believe the story that you want. Another good example of logical inconsistency is where Tyrande is on her knees saying to Elune, "My life for the Banshee Queen." Elune goes, "Right, all my power into you, let's fucking go." She catches Sylvanas, almost kills her, and then Elune goes, "Well, nope, not my power, not today." And then Sylvanas overpowers her and escapes. And then 5 minutes later, Elune goes, "If Tyrande wants my power, she can choose to take my power. If she doesn't want my power, she can choose not to take my power. She doesn't have to die." But in the beginning of the expansion, we learned that that is not a choice that all Night Warriors had. Night Warriors, once invoking the power of the Night Warrior, will die due to the power of the Night Warrior. So what logical reason is provided for why Tyrande gets to decide whether or not she wishes to live with the power of Elune, when it's already been established that the power of Elune cannot be withdrawn? In order for balance to be attained, the power of Elune will ultimately destroy the wielder. So the wielder will get the power to exact their revenge, but then that power kills the wielder so as to protect balance. And then suddenly that's forgotten. World of Warcraft Shadowlands is filled with logical inconsistencies. The biggest issue is Zuvul. He is a logical inconsistency wrapped inside an illogical storyline. You know, he did a couple of things that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, and then he did a bunch of other things that doesn't make a whole lot of sense as to how he did those things, and nothing is really explained. So I don't believe that trying to bring back Zuvul will ever really work. I mean, as to your Arthas guess, I think it's pretty clear that Steve Denuser is done with Arthas. Those final lines that Sylvanas said really felt like more of a big fat fuck you to the players. It sort of felt like the players themselves were they were the audience that those lines were meant for. A sort of, can we please stop talking about him? His legacy is done. Fuck him. I don't think Steve Denuser wants to bring back Arthas ever. I think Steve Denuser views Arthas as problematic at best, and therefore not worth his time. That would be my answer.
Yeah, I can see that for Arthas, especially with Steve Denuser. But my thing is that down the line, like the same thing was with Illidan, right? Illidan, they're like, yeah, he's dead, he's gone, he's never gonna come back. Mm-hmm. And then suddenly Legion comes around and they're like, yeah, no, he's coming back. He's been alive. You know, demons, they don't really die. They're like, they go to the Nether and they can respawn and come back.
Yeah.
I feel like they're.
I just want to say though, with Illidan, he was never actually killed. If you go back to TBC, when we defeat him atop of Black Temple, it is what's her name again? Oh my god, names, dude. Maiev takes him prisoner. So he is actually, because remember, she's a warden, so she takes him prisoner and throws him into the prison. So he's never actually killed. So with Illidan, there was always a chance for Illidan to make his return. He was kept on ice, similar to what Sylvanas is now. Sylvanas is put inside the maw on ice to be brought back. With Arthas, there was a pretty big finality. It was pretty much, you're fucking done, get the fuck out. So I don't think Arthas would be similar in this. But then again, you know, in times of need, if Steve Denuza realizes that none of his stories is actually hitting with the player base, he might grasp at straws and go, okay, who was the best person we've ever had? Fuck it, let's bring back Arthas. So there is a chance for that.
And especially there's like like this random turtle NPC in Ardenweald that's like on an island by itself. And when you go talk to him, he's like, you ask him, like, yo, you're in this island. This island's like drifting away into like the in-between, right? And it's like, it's gonna fade, you're gonna die again, right? In the Shadowlands, you're as a spirit, you're gonna die a second time. Yeah. And the turtle responds back with like, oh no, death is only just the beginning as well. In the Shadowlands, it's like, wait, question mark. So like,
this boils down once again to the logical inconsistencies, because it's not just that. I can't remember off the top of my head, but there's now a few times we were told that death within the Shadowlands is the final death, right? It's sort of the ultimate death. But then there's a number of times where that's not necessarily true. It's not necessarily true that death is the final thing, because for Zereth Mortis, they sort of say that every soul has a purpose, and that souls within the Shadowlands are oftentimes used in Zereth Mortis, right? And that souls who die can return to Zereth Mortis. So it's sort of like a thing of, wait, but so in other words, no one really ever dies in the Shadowlands either? So the Shadowlands is just a never-ending sort of cycle of, you die, you go to Zereth Mortis, you get pushed out again. You die, you go to Zereth Mortis, you get pushed out again. What is the sense and purpose then? Death should be final, or at least should have enough question marks around it to where we believe it to be final. The issue is that if you have all of these logical inconsistencies within a story, and then you break that veil, that veil of secrecy between the finality of death and sort of the revolving door of death, as Apocalypse just said in chat, it loses a lot of its oomph, you know. Suddenly it doesn't feel as bad anymore. It's actually one of the reasons I think Shadowlands did more harm that most people can actually give it credit for. Because even if the Shadowlands story was absolutely fantastic, the one thing that Shadowlands' story pretty much did from the start was remove the secrecy of death. Suddenly death is no longer the end. Death doesn't even fucking matter. So why are you sad with creatures dying, right? Why were you sad when Vol'jin kicked the bucket? Why were you sad when Varian got killed? You shouldn't be sad. They're just in the Shadowlands. You can go visit them. Just enter the portal and go say hello, right? So you've effectively removed one of the biggest emotional things a game can have, a story can have, and that is the death of interesting characters, which should be emotional. But now, in the future, if any character dies, it is legitimately just gonna be, well, you know, we can go visit them in the Shadowlands anytime we fucking want. So so I think even if Shadowlands hit the mark, it has done irreparable damage to World of Warcraft and the story of World of Warcraft. And I wish they wouldn't have done it. I really wish Blizzard would not have gone this route. Because ultimately, they've just removed one of the biggest mechanics you have as a storyteller. And I can tell you, as someone that has recently been playing a lot of Final Fantasy XIV, death in Final Fantasy XIV hits fucking hard. Like, the death of characters in FF14, everyone will know what I'm talking about when I say the Vault of Light. The death that occurred in there, I don't want to spoil it for people who maybe isn't there yet, but believe me, that death fucking rocks you to your core. And it's because it is final. It's final. If someone dies, it's done. They're not coming back. There's no revolving door. And they use death to such a great extent, and so specifically, that it keeps things interesting. It keeps you on your toes. Whereas once you have the Shadowlands, what point is there to even give a fuck, right? So yeah, that would be my answer, Sun Zero.
Yeah, it sounds good.
All right.
It's really tragic though that like they kind of took away the mystery of the afterlife. Or if they were going to approach it right, that they would approach it in a safe manner, right?
Yeah.
Like maybe make the Shadowlands like the in between space between like the actual afterlife, but they went around it the worst way possible.
The way I would have done the Shadowlands expansion, if it was up to me, was the Shadowlands invading Azeroth. So the forces of the Jailer invading Azeroth, not us going to the Shadowlands.
Yeah, and they're taking over Northrend, and then you have to like refight all your way up to the Ice Crown, like close the gate. That would have been cool. That would have been a really good way of going about it.
I mean, it would have been the ultimate sort of goodbye to a character like Arthas, going back to Northrend, ICC being the final dungeon once again, maybe revamped and revisited, with Zuval being at the top of Ice Crown Citadel. Once you defeat him, you close the door, and death is once again, not in our world. Very similar to what they do whenever we fight the Burning Legion. We don't go to the Twisting Nether to fight the Burning Legion. The Burning Legion always comes to us. And it again opens the sort of door for players to kind of go, wait a second, but is death then where we go when we die? Or is death just another power within the universe vying for our souls to turn us into weapons of destruction? But it doesn't answer the question whether or not death is final or whether or not death is a revolving door, as they say. So I personally think that would have been a much better sort of hook for that expansion. But obviously Blizzard, Steve Denuser in his infinite wisdom decided to go the opposite direction and ended up ruining any notion of death. Because what's going to happen in the future? Will anyone in this chat truly be sad at the death of a character in the future? Anyone in this fucking channel?
Personally, me, I don't think so. I think it's like if a character dies, it's like you said, like, oh, they just go to Shadowlands. Oh, yeah. Cool. I wonder what afterlife they go to, unless they go into like what's it called, the Sylvanas novel, which I don't even know why they call it the Sylvanas novel, because it should be like you said last time. It's like Shadowlands director's cut. Yeah. It's like there's an infinite amount of afterlives, right? Yeah. Where it's like this person who dies, they're going to go into one of these infinite afterlives, and there's no way you can reach them. It's just like impossible, right? Yeah. But that's not like really, what's the word? Expanded upon within the game at all, right? That's something that is just new within the novel.
I mean, look, if we're going to talk about the novel, I've had so much time last week to think about this. I'm still so angry and salty over the World of Warcraft novel. It is not even funny. Ian Azikostas made a clear promise to the player base before Shadowlands launched. He was asked, literally in an interview, he was asked the question, in the past, you have put the stories for World of Warcraft in novels and also in the game to where it was necessary for people to read the novel in order to understand the story. And Ian Azikostas replied to this saying, if a player needs to read the novel in order to understand the story that we're telling, then we have failed. He said, we'll never do that again. And it's like, if you can make honest sense of the Shadowlands story without reading the Sylvanas novel, I will suck your fucking dick. Because there is no fucking way. There is not a single person that can make sense of this fucking expansion without the novel. The novel literally explains everything that should have been explained before the fucking expansion even launched, so that you have a clue of what the hell you're doing there. So I guess Blizzard literally failed by their own admission. Of course, they won't admit that they literally failed by their own admission. So Ian once again confirmed to be a fucking liar. Let me not get triggered again with the novel, because that would just lead to me ranting and raving for another half an hour about how fucking angry I am about the novel.
It's extremely irritating, especially with how you articulated last week as well. It's like Shadowlands, the expansion is like at most maybe being generous 20 to 30% of like the actual story they want to tell, and then the novel is like the rest of it. And it's like, this is pretty important because in the novel they make Zaval pretty interesting dude, and it's like, man, that would have been really cool to have this guy as an antagonist, you know, in the game, and not this stuff where it's like, oh, you know, his only line, you can't escape the ball, and then we first need to escape the ball.
Dude, I'm gonna be honest with you. The Zuval from the novel is fucking perfect.
Yeah, he's great.
It's perfect.
Really cool.
The problem is we only got to know him after he died, right? So it literally is you going to the funeral of someone you absolutely fucking hated, and then you learn who they actually were in the eulogy. It's like, well, it's too late now.
Yeah, and you're like, man, he was a great dude, and that's actually kind of why I was asking my question, because after I saw the video you made about the Sylvanas, and also read the Wowhead article where they talk about Zaval and some of the stuff in there, and people posting on Twitter some of the chapter bits about him. I'm like, man, this is really cool. I kind of wish he wasn't gone, so we could actually have this story fully fleshed out, you know, and fixed on it. Yeah. And it's kind of sad that that's not going to be the case, unless they retroactively go back and they try to mend it. But I don't know if Blizzard's going to risk that, like you said, because Zaval right now is a very, let's say, contentious character with the player base, and it's really unfortunate. Yeah,
to say the least. I see there's still quite a few people, but let me just very quickly answer Jason here. Jason, if you have a question, you jump into the general channel, right? So Moni can check your mic and everything like that, and you ask your question in the Q&A section on Discord. So in Discord, you literally, I think most people go hashtag Q&A, but you don't really have to. You just ask your question and Moni will put you in the list to ask whatever question you have. Sun-Zero, thank you so much for the question. I really appreciate it. And also for the discussion, the subsequent discussion that followed. It was a lot of fun. I hope to see you again in the future.
Sure thing, Alicon. Yeah, and thanks so much for bringing me on. I really appreciate it.
It is my absolute pleasure. Thanks so much for joining. Take care, bro.